Hello, Christian Jones here, and welcome along to another episode of Manx Radio's newscast, an opportunity to listen to the interviews in full from start to finish as if you were there in the room. Now, the Infrastructure Minister's been responding to recommendations set out in a report which looks into the Isle of Man's heritage railways. The transport consultancy firm behind it is known as Sistra, and estimates the network brings a boost to the Manx economy of around £17 million each year. But the publication of these recommendations is long awaited and has been the subject to scrutiny in the island's political sittings, where members queried why it was yet to be made public. It's important to note these are just the recommendations which have been published, and a date we're likely to see the review in full remains unknown. I headed down to Minister Tim Crockall's office to discuss the findings. It was November when your political colleagues asked why it had taken so long for the report to be made public. Your response back then was it was to check for spelling and grammar, and it absolutely wasn't because any alterations were being made. I assume you've read through the entire report?
Yes, yeah.
What do you think of it? Because there are quite considerable spelling mistakes in there. So what were those 2 months for?
Well, I mean, the idea of a draft report is a working report. So you get your report back that you've asked somebody to come in and do. And then on the back of that, you query things that they've come up with. But as I said at the time, people will get that the first report, the draft report, so they'll be able to see that's what we got first, and then they'll get the working report at the end of it that's been tidied up, if you like, where we've done some queries with Sistra. They'll be able to see the difference between the two, and they'll obviously get our comments, our appendices, if you like, from the department on our views on it. But they will absolutely get both those reports.
And when is the full report due? Because you did make that commitment. You're quoted as saying the report will come to honourable members as soon as we've got it back. That was the 31st of October. So when will it be made public?
It was, and obviously we had a couple of weeks over Christmas and stuff like that, but it's been backwards and forwards between the officers and themselves. And I'm very much hopeful, as it said in the letter yesterday, sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Do you have a definitive date?
No, I don't.
As the DOI Minister, what value do you place on the island's heritage railways?
Quite a lot. I am a supporter of the Heritage Railways. My first appointment was DCCL, Department of Community, Culture and Leisure, which looked after those at the time. And they absolutely do have a value to the island, for tourism. And of course, locals, a lot of locals use all of them regularly.
So let's have a look at some of the recommendations. The first being a strategy which should be produced for the development of the railway over the period to 2040. Is that a fair recommendation?
It might be on there. It might be a wishful one on their part. I mean, again, it will come down to sort of finances and all sorts of things. And since we asked for this report and since we've had the draft report, we've obviously been working with Visit Isle of Man. They're obviously heavily involved with the people that use this as well as the locals. And we've been working with those. So we'll sit down now once we've absolutely finished the report and all sorts and work with them, looking on the strategy for the future, whether it's, to 2040 or whether it's just over the next 5 years. I don't know, probably 5 years to start with, to be fair. Small steps, if you like.
And financial performance shows that the network provides a boost to the Manx economy by around £17 million per year. Were you aware of the financial benefit that it brings for every £1 of subvention spent prior to that report?
No, that's a new figure. And I was saying to somebody else earlier, it's good to get those, and out of this report, we could have picked on a figure, but this is to get that back, and that's been part of the discussions. How did you work that out and all sorts? So I think we're fairly happy with that figure.
And do you think that's something that requires more focus? Because if that's making a pretty good return, then should we be utilising that as much as possible?
Yeah, very much so. And anything, if you like, that makes a profit has got to be a good thing. So we need to continue to use it and look after it, and hopefully grow those numbers.
Another highlights ticket prices as something which needs consideration. Do you have any initial thoughts on whether ticket prices are likely to be changed?
They probably will. I mean, we haven't discussed it yet, or if somebody might have discussed it, but it hasn't crossed my desk yet. But we look at all pricings across everything we do every year. Obviously, the pricing structure seems to work and be very fair, and people are happy with it because it's making us some money, if you like. So we're happy with it at the moment. But we'll look at those fares.
Okay, the report does say that keeping lower prices would promote sustainable tourism, and obviously the government does have an ambition to increase the number of tourists that come to the island.
Yeah, and people will always, you ask anybody, people will always want to keep prices, whether it's your petrol, your beer, or whatever the case may be, down. But prices do have to go up because there's expenses to be paid.
So you're not ruling out an extra subvention injection to keep prices lower at all?
No, there won't be a subvention to keep the prices lower. Yeah, we've got to consider what's a priority, if you like. And I had this discussion with one of the fellow colleagues this morning. And as much as people do support and will support the trams and the trains and the horse trams, we've got to realise what the priorities are and where we've got to put our money. So they've had £5 million a year for the last 7 years put into the trams and trains. That's not sustainable, and we've said that's going down to £2.5 million, and it may well be that gets cut more, but we will absolutely look to keep the trams and trains running as best as possible for years to come because they're an asset.
Okay, and while we're on the topic of finances, capital spending has been chopped in half last year, and the report recommends increasing it again for a small number of years. From what I'm told, in the last budget, when MHK Chris Thomas was the minister, Treasury was making the cuts and sliced a number of DOI projects in half, the Heritage Railways being one of them. The upcoming budget next month, are you expecting to see any reinstatement of capital spending and be closer towards that £5 million?
You'll have to wait and see.
Is there anything in the upcoming budget for railways?
You'll have to wait and see.
Do you think it's maybe a bit late to be receiving this information to be able to make any immediate changes because Treasury spends the whole year making the budget?
No, not really. I mean, it would be nice to have it earlier, but it was only asked for in May, and we only got it back in October, so it is what it is. We'll work with it, and we'll do our best with it, and use the information we've got.
Okay, and obviously you said I'll have to wait and see, but did the DOI ask for a reinstatement of funding?
No.
So with the report now in front of you, how many of the recommendations are you going to be seriously considering?
We'll consider them all and we'll discuss them all. And as I say, we've had groups of interested parties asking if they can, and there's a question down next week, so obviously be careful here what I say, but we're happy to discuss the findings with anybody.
Horse trams, let's come to that, one of the more contentious topics. The report does say that there is a case for reinstatement of them to the sea terminal. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a case for it. There's a lot of people shouting for it. There's a lot of people saying, don't you dare. So it's, we'll have to go back to Tynwald for the money to do that. Obviously, it was de-scoped during the prom work. So we'll have to go back to Tynwald at some stage. But, again, it's one of those things. It'll all come down to finances and, whether we can get the money to do it.
Do you think that the department would be able to find the money to develop the sea terminal in line with this, as the report suggests?
That would be hard in the next couple of years, I would imagine. As I say, keep telling people, things are tough and going to get tougher over the next couple of years. I think we're going to be really tight. There's no reason why it can't. And a lot of the work has been done for where the tram is going, the horse trams are going to go. So it's just a case of clearing that space again and then getting on with it and putting the tracks down, I suppose. It's not quite that simple, of course, but it could be done. At some stage, I would imagine it will be done, but who knows when.
MHK Daphne Kane, also the chair of the Douglas Bay Tramway Heritage Trust, thinks the increase in passenger numbers could be seen if the horse trams went all the way into the sea terminal itself and form part of that core visitor experience. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it probably would bring those numbers back up even further. Obviously it used to come right the way along Loch Promenade and stop there. And I was talking to somebody again the other day. We stood here at the sea terminal, and he actually said to me, this is where they used to come to, which is right in the car park here at the sea terminal. And I either didn't know that or I'd forgotten it. I'm not that old. But, one day, who knows, it would make sense. It would be nice to see them, but it's all going to come down to money.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.